At Westgate High, one quiet girl shattered every stereotype in just 10 seconds. Layla Grant, a 16-year-old with a calm voice and years of silent training, didn't raise her fists. She held her ground. When a senior football player tried to push her aside, he didn't just pick the wrong fight, he picked the wrong narrative. What followed went viral, but what really happened runs deeper than any clip. This isn't a story about violence. It's about control, dignity, and the power of poise under pressure. There's something about high school cafeterias that turns them into quiet stages for public performance. Not just a place to eat, but to be seen, to stake claim to invisible territory, to prove who matters and who doesn't. At Westgate High, that reality played out with quiet regularity, but no one expected it to unravel in 10 seconds on a Thursday, starring a soft-spoken junior named Layla Grant. Layla was 16, quiet but never passive, the kind of girl who noticed everything and said nothing, until someone gave her a reason. That day, her usual seat by the windows was taken. She moved toward a table near the center, half filled, just loud enough to be safe, and just empty enough to keep her out of the spotlight. But a gym bag lay across the bench like a warning sign. She paused. The bag belonged to Chase Dillard, a senior with a reputation built less on actions and more on how people flinched when he passed. What unfolded next wasn't just a territorial scuffle, it was a collision of power and perception. Chase didn't expect Layla to challenge him, not because he thought she couldn't, but because he assumed she wouldn't. That assumption, quiet girls don't push back, black girls must shrink to stay safe, revealed more than his ego. It revealed a high school ecosystem that tolerated aggression as long as it wore the right jacket. When Layla asked him to move the bag, she wasn't confrontational. She was calm, measured. But Chase took her composure as defiance. He cracked jokes for his friends, made a show of mockery. Yet what started as a performance spiraled into something raw. His tone sharpened, his body tensed. And when he finally shoved her, it wasn't just about a seat. It was about defending his illusion of control. What no one expected was what came next. Because Layla didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She stood up. And the moment she did, something shifted. Not just in that cafeteria, but in the way everyone at Westgate High understood power. Layla Grant didn't grow up looking for confrontation. If anything, she learned early that most people only noticed her when it was convenient, or when they needed someone quiet to ignore. At 16, she had mastered the art of invisibility in a world that too often demanded volume to validate presence. But silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. She lived in a modest apartment complex on the east side of Mesa, Arizona, tucked between a fading strip mall and a stretch of cactus-lined highway. The walls were thin, but the love inside was strong. Her mother, Dr. Natalie Grant, worked double shifts at the urgent care clinic. Her older cousin Marcus, 22 and back from active duty, helped hold things together when long nights stretched into longer mornings. Their home didn't have much, but it had rhythm. It had routine. It had reminders, spoken and unspoken, that strength wasn't always loud. The turning point came when Layla was 13. She was walking home from her piano lesson when a stranger followed her across a grocery store parking lot. Nothing happened, at least not outwardly, but something inside her shifted. That night, her mother sat her down and signed her up for a beginner's Krav Maga course. This isn't about fear, she told her. It's about being ready. What started as a precaution became a practice. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, Layla trained. The studio didn't cater to kids and no one gave her special treatment. She learned how to breathe through pressure, how to read tension before it exploded. By the time she was 15, she could disengage a chokehold, break a wrist grip, and most importantly, stay calm when someone lost control. But Layla didn't broadcast any of this. She never posted training videos, never bragged in gym class. Her strength wasn't curated for social media. It lived in her posture, in her measured movements, in the way she never rushed to prove herself. At school, people saw what they wanted to see. She was the quiet black girl with a good GPA and a seat near the back of the classroom. Teachers liked her because she never caused problems. Students overlooked her because she never tried to belong. That's how it goes in places like Westgate High, where cafeteria fame often matters more than the actual ability. What they didn't see was how often she noticed the little things. The way Chase Dillard mocked kids who couldn't defend themselves. The way adults smiled awkwardly and moved on, as if silence was easier than conflict. Layla saw it all, but she stayed still, collecting the moments. She had no interest in being anyone's lesson until the day came when she had no choice. Her cousin Marcus used to say, "You don't need to talk big when you move smart." He wasn't talking about fights. He was talking about dignity, about holding your space when people try to take it from you. For Layla, those words became muscle memory. There's a myth in schools like hers that discipline is the same as safety, but too often rules are written for order, not for fairness. Kids like Chase get second chances because of who they know or how they perform on game day. Kids like Layla are expected to endure, to stay polite even when disrespected. Zero tolerance policies make no room for context. A push is a push. A reaction is a risk. But the truth is more complicated. Layla didn't start anything in that cafeteria. She simply refused to be moved by someone who thought her silence meant submission. And when the cameras came out, when the 10-second video hit Instagram with a trending sound and a looping caption, none of that context made the cut. Viewers saw a quiet girl redirect a senior athlete to the ground. They cheered. They stitched. They turned Layla into a symbol. But symbols don't carry full stories. They flatten people. They turn reality into narrative. Layla knew that. She didn't want to be a meme. She just wanted to get through lunch like everyone else. What happened that day wasn't sudden. It was the result of years of learning to hold her ground. Years of silence that had never meant surrender. Years of knowing her worth and waiting for the moment, if it ever came, when she'd have to prove it. It started the way most things do in high school, with someone trying to prove something in front of an audience that didn't ask for a show. Lunch at Westgate High was always loud, always packed. Students spilled across tables with trays and earbuds, and TikTok dances half finished before the bell. Layla Grant, calm as ever, just wanted a seat. Her usual spot by the windows had been taken, so she adjusted, just like she always did, and approached a table near the center of the commons. The seat she chose wasn't empty. A gray duffel bag stretched across the bench, marking invisible territory. Layla knew whose it was before she even looked up. Chase Dillard, senior, wide receiver. One of those students who didn't need to do much to be known. His silence walked louder than most people's shouting. He had a way of taking up space, not just physically, but socially. People watched him, avoided him, deferred to him. Layla didn't. She stopped in front of the bench and asked, plain and calm, "Can you move your bag?" No sarcasm, no attitude, just a question. Chase didn't answer right away. He kept picking at his fries like he hadn't heard. But she was standing right there, and everyone around them had paused just enough to hear what would come next. When he did look up, it was with a slow smirk. "Whole cafeteria's open," he said, barely glancing at her. "And you want to sit here?" "It's not your table," she replied, steady. "It's just your bag." That's when it shifted. To most, it might have looked like nothing. A small exchange. A moment that could have passed unnoticed. But in a space like a high school cafeteria, where reputation is currency, Layla's composure was a challenge. Not to the seat, but to the entire structure that kept people like Chase on top. Chase leaned back, laughed a little, glanced at his friends. One of them muttered something under his breath, and another started recording. Layla noticed. Phones were subtle, but they were always out, ready for a show. With exaggerated reluctance, Chase dragged the duffel just far enough for her to sit. Most people would have walked away or picked a different seat. But Layla wasn't most people. She sat down, slow, confident, without making a scene. That's what threw him off. He wasn't used to people sitting through the tension. He kept cracking jokes louder than necessary, hoping to pull the attention back to himself. Layla didn't react. She pulled out her book, flipped it open, and let the noise pass over her like wind through trees. 10 minutes in, Chase shifted gears. He stopped laughing. He turned toward her, voice louder now, sharp. "You think you're tough or something?" She looked up, calm. "I'm just sitting." Chase stood, body inching into her space. Then sit somewhere else. Now heads were turning, conversations paused. One girl leaned forward, ready to whisper the play-by-play. Another had her camera already up. Layla closed her book. "I'm not moving," she said. His tray clattered aside as he leaned closer, palm slapping the table. A few students flinched. He shoved her. Not enough to hurt, just enough to test her balance and test the moment. But Chase didn't know who he was pushing. Because Layla had spent 3 years training for situations exactly like this one. Not to fight, but to stay steady when the room turned sideways. To react without rage. To act without aggression. She didn't blink, didn't raise her voice. She just stood. And then it happened. He reached again, this time faster, this time with the intent to shove her harder, to knock her backward, to remind everyone watching who the dominant one was. But Layla didn't go back. She stepped in. She shifted her weight, turned her shoulder inward, and let his energy pass her like a wave. Her left hand guided his wrist. Her right touched the pressure point behind his elbow. One pivot, one breath, and Chase was on the ground. It wasn't violent. It wasn't flashy. It was efficient, controlled. He hit the floor hard enough to startle the room. Gas echoed through the commons like dropped glass. Phones caught it all. Her calm, his stumble, the stunned silence that followed. Chase scrambled to his feet, face flushed, ego bruised deeper than any bone. He tried to bark back. "You think that was funny?" Layla looked at him, voice quiet but undeniable. "Are you done embarrassing yourself?" That's when the laughter started. Not cruel, not mocking, just shocked. Like everyone had watched a glitch in the system, a moment where someone rewrote the rules in real time. The cafeteria's temperature changed. The monitors started moving through the crowd too late. Chase backed away, muttering. Layla sat back down and opened her book again. But nothing was the same. By the end of the school day, the video was everywhere. It wasn't just a moment, it was a movement. 10 seconds clipped and looped. "Quiet Girl Flips Senior," read one caption. Another read, "She didn't flinch." Paired with trending audio and slowed down edits, the clip exploded. But viral fame carries shadows. Layla became the center of a conversation she never asked for. Some praised her as a role model. Others accused her of overreacting. Online debates flared. Was it self-defense or showmanship? Should she be punished or applauded? Meanwhile, behind closed doors, administrators held meetings. Security footage was reviewed. The assistant principal, a cautious man named Mr. Falk, called her into the office. Chase was already seated, arms crossed, eyes down. "She threw me down," he started, "in front of everybody." Layla didn't interrupt. Mr. Falk turned to her. "Is that true?" "He shoved me twice," she said. "I told him not to. I used what I know to get him off me." Mr. Falk raised a brow. "What do you know?" "Krav Maga," she replied. 3 years. The room went quiet. It wasn't what they expected. The silent girl in the back row, trained, controlled, composed. "I didn't throw a punch," Layla added. "I didn't want to fight. I just didn't want to be shoved again." Mr. Falk nodded slowly. "We'll review everything. But for now, you both stay in separate areas. No suspension yet." Chase groaned. Layla said nothing. That night, the video hit 100,000 views. Some comments were crude, some were empowering, but most couldn't believe what they saw. 10 seconds. That's all it took to flip the narrative on its head, to turn a quiet girl into the loudest message Westgate High had ever received. She didn't raise her fists. She just refused to be moved. By the time Layla Grant made it to her last class that Thursday, she wasn't just a student anymore. She was a story, and the story was spreading faster than anything Westgate High had seen in years. The clip made it to Instagram first. 10 seconds. No context. Just Chase Dillard shoving her, then spinning through the air before landing flat on the floor. It looped with captions like, "Don't mess with quiet girls," and "She flipped him with no effort." The hallway buzzed with reactions. Some students laughed. Some whispered. Some stared when she passed like they were seeing her for the first time. She felt it immediately. Not fear, not shame, just visibility. And that came with weight. Layla had spent her school life quietly avoiding the spotlight. Now the spotlight followed her everywhere. Teachers looked at her differently, like they weren't sure if they should be concerned or impressed. Students who had never said a word to her were suddenly offering high fives or quick nods of respect. Even the freshmen stared, phones in hand, comparing the real Layla to the girl in the video. But it wasn't admiration she wanted. It was understanding. That moment wasn't about dominance. It wasn't performance. It was survival. In second period the next day, one teacher stopped her after class, voice low. "You okay?" Layla nodded, but the question landed awkwardly. No one had asked if she needed help. No one asked why she had to defend herself in the first place. They just wanted to make sure she was okay after going viral. By lunch on Friday, Chase hadn't returned. Rumors flew. Some said he claimed to feel unsafe. Others said he was too embarrassed to show up. Either way, his absence didn't erase what had happened, and it didn't stop the consequences from spreading. At the vending machines during last period, two of Chase's friends cornered her, not with violence, but with veiled hostility wrapped in politeness. "Yo, Layla," one said. "You didn't have to go full MMA just to make a point." She turned toward him, calm and even. "You think this was about making a point?" He shrugged. "Whatever it was, you made him look weak. That's not gonna sit well." Layla didn't flinch. Then maybe he shouldn't push people who ask politely. The two boys exchanged glances. They didn't have an answer. They backed off, but their message was clear. Chase's pride had taken a hit, and some people felt like Layla was the one who needed to pay for it. That afternoon, she was called to the office again. This time, it wasn't just about reviewing the incident. It was about the growing attention. Principal Ward sat her and her mother, Natalie, down. "We've been in contact with the district," he began, "and with Chase's family." He paused. "They're considering transferring him out." Layla said nothing. "You're not in trouble," he continued, "but we want to make sure you feel safe here, that this environment still supports you." Layla met his gaze. "I've always felt safe," she said. "It's other people who didn't expect me to be." Her mother nodded, arms crossed, calm but firm. Principal Ward seemed unsure how to respond. Administrators often expect fear, regret, or drama. What they weren't prepared for was quiet composure rooted in conviction. Still, the system around them was more concerned with the viral impact than the core problem. No staff member mentioned Chase's long history of hallway intimidation. No administrator talked about the school's failure to intervene before things escalated. The adults reviewed video frames, the students shared memes, but few asked why someone like Layla had to rely on self-defense in the first place. The policies in place, zero tolerance, blanket consequences, automatic suspensions, weren't built to handle nuance. They didn't consider how bias shaped which students got the benefit of the doubt. They didn't ask what it meant when girls, especially black girls, were labeled as aggressive for setting boundaries. Layla hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't swung. She hadn't escalated. But she was still treated as part of a conflict, not a response to one. In schools across the country, these kinds of moments happen in real time, and too often, they're only addressed when captured on video. Social media turned Layla's act into a trending moment, but virality doesn't equal justice. It's easier to celebrate a viral clapback than to confront the environment that made it necessary. The clip passed 200,000 views by Saturday morning. TikToks, reactions, remixes, and with every share, Layla's image became more myth than person. She didn't hate it, but she didn't love it either. Her cousin Marcus called that night. "You're everywhere," he said. "Even my coworkers are talking about you." Layla smiled faintly. "I just didn't want him to push me again." "That's the part they don't get," he replied. "You didn't flip him to win. You moved to not lose." By Monday, Chase was back. No apologies, no fanfare. But he didn't walk the same way anymore. The weight he used to carry, the swagger, the smirk, was gone. People looked at him differently now. He took up less space, not because he was scared, but because the illusion of control had been cracked. Layla didn't avoid him. She didn't glare. She didn't speak. She simply moved forward. And in a school that often confused silence with weakness, she had made her stance clear. She didn't fight for power. She stood for peace. But peace, she knew, wasn't always quiet. Sometimes it looked like holding your ground, no matter who's watching. Friday afternoon, the sun dipped low behind Westgate's rust-colored gym as students rushed toward buses and car lines. Layla Grant moved slower than usual, earbuds in, walking alone along the back path toward the neighborhood gate where she always caught her ride home. She wasn't thinking about the video, or the stairs, or the whispering that had followed her from classroom to cafeteria all week. She was thinking about finishing the chapter in her book, catching her breath, maybe finally going a day without someone pulling her into their version of her story. That's when she saw him. Chase Dillard stood near the chain-link fence by the rear parking lot, alone, hands in the pockets of his hoodie, shoulders hunched like the weight of everything finally caught up. Layla stopped, pulled one earbud out. "I'm not here to start anything," he said quickly, voice low. "I just didn't know how else to say something." She didn't answer right away, just stood with the silence, letting him take responsibility for filling it. Chase cleared his throat, looking down. "I messed up. I let people gas me up. Thought pushing you would make me look tough or whatever. But all it did was make me look small." Layla didn't speak, her arms folded loosely across her chest. She didn't look angry, just grounded. "I saw the comments," he added. "The videos, the edits, they're brutal." He paused. "But what hit the hardest wasn't falling. It was the way you handled it. You didn't yell. You didn't lose it. You just moved." She tilted her head slightly. "I've had to learn how." Chase looked at her then, not like someone sizing up a threat, but like someone seeing a person for the first time. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I just needed to say I was wrong. You didn't deserve that. Any of it." Layla nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that." And with that, it was over. Not erased, not forgotten, but closed. Chase turned and walked back toward the staff lot, his steps quieter than before. Layla put her earbud back in and kept walking. Her pace didn't change, her direction didn't shift, but something had settled. Because the truth is, what happened between them wasn't just a conflict. It was a shift in the narrative people had come to expect from high school stories like theirs. Layla didn't fight for revenge. She didn't clap back for applause. She made a boundary clear, and when it was crossed, she acted. Not to punish, to protect. And now Chase had come to recognize that. It didn't mean everything was suddenly better. Apologies don't fix systems, but they can begin to soften the edges of harm. They can be the first step toward a kind of growth that rarely gets captured in viral clips. Over the weekend, the buzz online slowed. The video still made rounds, still popped up in group chats and reaction threads, but now the tone was shifting. Some users began posting about the importance of self-control. Others stitched clips with commentary on school safety, bullying, and power dynamics, finally reaching for the bigger picture. Layla didn't repost it. She didn't comment, but she watched some of them. Listened to how strangers tried to explain what she already knew firsthand. That strength wasn't in the flip. It was in the decision not to escalate, in the ability to act without rage, in the refusal to become what someone else expected. On Sunday night, as she folded laundry with her mom, the weight of it all finally lifted a little. "You okay?" her mother asked, not as a formality, but as a question layered with understanding. Layla nodded. "Yeah, I am." Because being okay didn't mean things were perfect. It just meant she hadn't been broken by what came her way. Later that evening, she pulled out her notebook. Not homework, not journaling, just space for thoughts. She wrote something in the corner of a page, quiet and small. You don't have to raise your voice to hold your space. That was her lesson, her power. And though the world had tried to shrink her, define her, turn her moment into content, it hadn't changed who she was. She had never been invisible. They had just never known how to see her. By Monday morning, Layla Grant's name still lingered in the halls of Westgate High, but it didn't carry shock anymore. It carried weight. Students still whispered, but not with pity. Teachers still watched, but not with confusion. What had started as a viral clip, a quiet girl redirecting a shove without blinking, had become something else entirely. A moment that asked questions most people weren't ready to answer. Why did it take going viral for someone like her to be seen? Why was calm under pressure more surprising than the aggression that caused it? Layla didn't have those answers, but she understood what the moment meant. It wasn't about fighting. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about knowing her limits, her values, and her right to take up space without apology. That's the part no one posted. The poise, the preparation, the self-control it takes not to react in anger when someone crosses the line. That kind of strength doesn't trend. It doesn't come with filters or edits, but it matters more than any applause. Layla had never needed attention. She'd needed respect. And now, for the first time, people were starting to understand the difference. But with that recognition came pressure. Eyes followed her in the hallway, not because they feared her, but because they didn't know what to make of her anymore. She had rewritten the narrative, and not everyone liked the new version. Some looked at her with admiration, others looked for cracks, waiting to see if she would stumble, waiting to see if the moment had changed her. It hadn't. She still sat quietly in the second row, still helped clean up lab tables when class ended, still walked the same path home with her earbuds in and her head held level. Because the power in that cafeteria wasn't just in how she moved, it was in how she didn't flinch. It was in how she didn't lose control, even when someone tried to take it from her. And that power, real power, wasn't loud. It was centered, it was taught, it was lived, and it would last longer than any clip online.